I've been warning my everydayers this is going to happen. I've warned about this possibility. Well, it looks like it's about to come to fruition.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thanks for making Locked On USC. It's part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day, whether you're watching the show on YouTube. Pick a platform, download the podcast. It's always free. I always appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Notre Dame, USC, iconic names, part of the fabric of college football. They've played each other 95 times. It'd be much closer to 100 if World War II and COVID didn't exist. But nevertheless, 95 times. And unless something changes, like within the next year and a half or less, this rivalry probably isn't going to make it to 100 games played. All I'm going to say is this. USC better win a national championship within the next two seasons, or Lincoln Riley, head coach, Jen Cohen, USC's athletic director, they're going to have to deal with some blowback. They're going to have to live with it, a lot of it. Maybe a couple of black eyes as well. Coach Riley floated, the trial balloon at last year's media days. And I'll tell you what, I guarantee you, with the latest news, it's going to be a topic at this year's media days when they take place in Las Vegas later in July. There was a story that Pat Forty put out in Sports Illustrated. It came out on Monday. Let me remind everybody what Coach Riley said last year. Quote, remember, this was that Big Ten media days last year, 2024. I would love to continue the series. I know it means a lot to a lot of people. The purist in you, no doubt. Now, if you get in a position where you got to make a decision on what's best for USC to help us win a national championship versus keeping that, he's referring to the rivalry, then you got to take a look at it. And listen, we're not the first example of that. Look all the way across the country. There's been a lot of other teams sacrificing rivalry games. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but as we get into the playoff structure, and if it changes or not, we're in this new conference. We're going to learn something about this as we go, and what the right and what the best track is to winning a national championship. That's going to evolve, end quote. No, you don't, Coach. No, you don't. Period. Let me say, USC has some of the best USC fans in the world, okay? One of them actually reminded myself and a few other people that, it's okay that USC and Notre Dame continue to play everybody, to play each other on an annual basis. Ending the rivalry doesn't change the fact that the Trojans have won 11 national championships. They beat Notre Dame every single year that they've won. Every time they've won a national championship, they've beaten Notre Dame on their schedule. Another poster over there, WeAreSC.com, said, look, it's not just about USC winning a national championship. It's also about taking away national championship opportunities from those, well, he used a really foul word, but I'm just going to say those leprechauns. So, yeah, you don't have to make the choice between, USC has to decide how to win a national championship or keeping Notre Dame on the schedule. No, you don't. I've been warning my everydayers about this possibility ever since I heard Coach Riley speak on it last year. And I've been talking about it more frequently lately. This hasn't just been, filibuster talk for me to kind of fill in segments during this offseason. I've been viscerally upset about this since last year. And now Pat Forty from Sports Illustrated, he's starting to make some noise. So I get it. I'm just, small potatoes here. Old Pat Forty has a bigger national audience. This is what he had to say. The USC Notre Dame rivalry, one of the greatest in college football, is on the brink of ending this fall. He posted on X, revealing the Trojans and the Irish may not come to an agreement to play beyond 2025. The two sides see the situation very differently, with talks ongoing. So far, and I think Notre Dame's going to accept this one-year deal because, USC want to play in LA as well. So USC has offered a one-year extension to play in Los Angeles in 2026, while Notre Dame desires another long-term deal. USC has broached the idea of moving the game to a season opening spot. So when you hear those words, it sounds like USC will consider extending a long-term relationship if the game can be moved to the preseason before they open conference play. I don't know. I'm open to that idea, but the USC versus Notre Dame rivalry, if Notre Dame says, you know what, no, we're not going to do that. We'll take your one deal. We'll take your one-year offer. We'll see you in LA in 2026. That's it. That's the end of the rivalry. Notre Dame, their athletic director, his name's Pete Pavakwa. He said he's made it clear that his school is seeking a long-term extension to the rivalry. Quote, I think Southern Cal and Notre Dame should play every year for as long as college football is played. That's what Pete Pavakwa told Sports Illustrated. SC knows that's how we feel, end quote. Besides Coach Riley's comments from last year, USC's athletic director, Jen Cohen, she hasn't said a whole lot. And here's how I look. Unless USC actually speaks out, kind of defends itself, the optics are easy to read. It's USC who's, pulling the plug on this thing, cutting off their nose to spite their face. Now, there is a quote from Cody Worsham, who is the associate athletic director, works with Jen Cohen. Quote, we want the USC Notre Dame rivalry to continue, which is why we offered an extension of our agreement. It's a special game to our fans and our institution. We will continue to work with Notre Dame on scheduling future games. So that doesn't sound real positive, right? We'll work with him to schedule future games. I got to tell you something. That doesn't lend me a whole lot of confidence. So we'll see how it plays out. But that's the response from USC in the SI article. According to the article, the Trojans, and this is, Pat Forty's interpretation, the Trojans are hesitant to enter into a long-term deal due to the uncertainty about the future of college football playoffs format and the demands of heightened travel since joining the Big Ten Conference. Now, and then again, one solution would be moving the game to a season opening spot on the schedule. And that's something that USC has broached. So that's where we're at right now. Basically, USC saying, yeah, we'll extend a long-term deal, but let's play the game, first game of the year every year. That's an option. Look, I'm okay with that. It'll be interesting to see Notre Dame coming to LA, Labor Day weekend when it's 100 degrees. I don't know. Maybe. But let me be very clear about this. Lincoln Riley, he needs to drop all the rationale and just say this series needs to be played regardless. No excuses. We're thinking, we're considering, we're looking at things. No, it doesn't matter. Just say this series has to go on and we'll do whatever we have to do to make sure it happens. The whole idea that this game needs to be sacrificed in order to win a national championship or ease the travel on the young men, as far as I'm concerned, that's BS. And I'll tell you what, I better never see USC sign up for that Shamrock series where they fly over to Ireland. Because if that's going to be part of the compromise, then all of a sudden, the excuses kind of go out the book, out the door. So what's they notice things? All right, we'll do it, but you got to go play us in Ireland, once every 5 years or whatever. So much for the travel on the team, the cost. I just want to know what happened to USC. What happened to anyone, any place, anytime? And with the playoffs more than likely expanding to 14 or 16 teams, not to mention the Big Ten and the SEC claiming there's going to be 4 automatic berths for teams out of their conferences. Look, as far as I'm concerned, you do not need to level down your schedule. If anything, everybody's starting to level up their schedule. There is absolutely no reason, zero reason to pull the trigger on the series, put it on the shelf. For me, I mean, literally, this is a red line in the sand. It cannot be crossed, period. And if they do, there's going to be consequences to suffer. Sue Craven's calling for a riot. I'll tell you what, if I'm one of those big money donors for USC, if money is a driving force, making the playoffs, look, I don't have that kind of scratch, but if I had that kind of money, I'd put it where my mouth is. And I'd be calling all my rich donor friends, all those high rollers, telling them, hey, you know what? Put your checkbook away. Forget NIL right now. If USC can't find the nerve, the intestinal fortitude to play anyone, any place, any time, specifically Notre Dame annually, then you don't need to buy the best players to go beat up on the Georgia Southerns and the Missouri States and, throw in another lower level FBS team. Stop cheapening the regular season because you're going to play 9 Big Ten conference games. Are you joking? I'm not on a Friday rant. I'm on a USC better be playing Notre Dame every freaking year rant. Look, I am not happy having to point out that USC is the one making this difficult. Because that's the impression I'm getting. And if anybody from USC wants to give me their side of the story, I'll be happy to report it here. More than happy to eat some crow. But let me just kind of remind everybody of the history of this game a little bit. USC used to play Notre Dame in South Bend at the end of the year. USC made the request that, hey, you know what? Let's see if we can balance this out a little bit. You guys come out to Southern California at the end of the year. The weather isn't quite as bad as it is in South Bend. It always rains in November when USC and Notre Dame play. But South Bend, end of November, yeah, it's usually like less than 0. So there was a compromise made. Notre Dame said, all right, we'll end our season in California. You can move the game up to October in South Bend. It just kind of feels like USC's playing that card again. We'll play you, but it's got to be one of the first 2 games of the year. Like I said, all I know is it just feels like USC is the entity that's putting this series in peril. And I'm not happy about it. So we'll see what happens. I'm not happy. We'll see how things play out. Guarantee it'll be a topic at Big Ten Media Days. That's probably going to be the next time we have an opportunity to talk to the parties involved. So if something happens between now and then, we'll talk about it. But I guarantee you, this topic will not be dying until that contract is signed. All right, we got a couple more segments to go. And it won't be quite as emotional as segment 1. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, as well as can't-miss moments. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart as well as win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? And how could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? Well, I'm going to tell you what. Tell you how. If you got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay at FanDuel? How could $200 in bonus bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet wins? New to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. It's that simple. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. I think it was Notre Dame's head coach who said recently, college football is a line of scrimmage game. Let me ask, what if Lincoln Riley calls more running plays in 2025 because he has to and not because he wants to? Last year, USC ran the ball, in my opinion, extremely well. However, there were times, let's just be fair about it, when they had to and they couldn't because the other team knew they had to run the ball. We've been talking about way too early preseason polls this offseason, and Trojans have not appeared in very many. And myself, as well as other Trojan fans, have been kind of wondering why. What's up? Where's the USC's number 23 in the country going before the season starts? Despite D'Anton-Lynn, returning the bulk of his really improved defense from 2024, not to mention adding more bulk in the offseason transfer portal, as well as adding experience, there's still doubts about USC's squad. But I don't think it's on D'Anton-Lynn's side of the ball. And I know this is probably going to sound a little bit crazy. However, I would probably argue that 90% of the way too early preseason doubt is on Lincoln Riley's side of the ball. Even though USC's defense had a really good spring camp, great spring camp. In fact, often, according to reports, dominating the offense. There's still a quiet confidence with the offensive line room. They returned 3 starters. They got more depth. So I don't think the issue with the voters or the pollsters has anything to do with USC's offensive line. And as far as the skill positions, as far as those positions are concerned, no. Coach Riley has plenty of options at running back, wide receiver, tight end. Not a problem there. However, I have heard, mixed reports, both off the record. That when it comes to Coach Riley's bread and butter, the quarterback position, that's where the concern is. And I think even Coach Riley knows his room, at least for the moment, has something to prove. Jaden Mayava, he's shown everybody the potential to be USC's next great gunslinger. And you got, true freshman Husan Longstreet. I've been told he just needs to get used to the speed of the college game. And look, there's no concrete evidence for me to make this claim. However, the way the roster is being built, much more size up front, much more size on the defensive side of the ball line of scrimmage. You got more depth at running back, more depth at tight end. I think Coach Riley believes and understands that running the ball in the big conference is kind of a prerequisite. Excuse me. I don't think Coach Riley has a choice. He might need to call more run plays in 2025 than he's used to, more than he wants to. Especially if you go back to last year, you had all those fourth quarter leads, and they turned into late game losses. I'm not saying look because it's not going to happen, not with Coach Riley, and I would hate if it did happen, but the Trojans with Coach Riley calling the plays on offense, they're not going to turn into the Naval Academy, right? They're not going to run the ball like the country's security depends on it. However, I think everyone would agree fewer bad things happen when you run the ball compared to throwing the ball. And right now, USC's quarterbacks, Jaden Mayaba specifically, needs to prove that, he's capable of doing more good things before they show up before USC shows up in any of those top 25 polls. So for me, that's where the issue lies. No one is feeling confidence with the quarterback room. And just ironically, that's Lincoln Riley's bread and butter. And I'm bringing this up because USC and Coach Riley, they've kind of been going in the opposite direction of Notre Dame. Notre Dame's, when both Marcus Freeman and Lincoln Riley, they're going into their fourth years. You could definitely say one program is ahead of the other. Chad Bowden, USC's general manager, he helped elevate Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irishes program. So I would anticipate, the same core values, those beliefs. He packed those in the suitcase and brought them with him. So USC, yeah, they have to use the line of scrimmage to their advantage. When you have all those weapons that USC has at running back and on the outside, including the tight ends, then run the ball. Set up play action. Am I saying, that they have no trust in the quarterback room? At least right now? No, I'm not saying that. However, I'd feel better if I knew the game wasn't resting on Jaden's shoulders, at least until he shows me his decision making has improved. I talked with a few people at Milliken over the weekend. I was at the Tournament of Champions passing game, Tournament of Champions passing league, whatever you want to freaking call it. Anyways, and I spoke to a few people who have watched USC spring practices. They were at the Trojan Olympics inside the Coliseum to end spring camp. And one person said, Mayaba, he's the guy right now until Husan can catch up to the speed of the college game. However, there's still some stuff that he saw from Jaden from last year that's still showing up. Jaden still has to make those yes or no throws. He has to decide when to do it, when not to do it. It took Coach Riley a little longer than anyone probably wanted to make the adjustment and replace Alex Grinch. Going into year 4, Coach Riley cannot wait much longer to adjust to what he needs to do and not what he wants to do. Okay. So yeah, I think you're going to see just because of the way the roster is being constructed, I think you're going to see them run the ball more. Not because they want to, but because they have to. Sometimes both of those things come together at the same time. That's where they're at right now, though. All right, so everybody else is making some way too early predictions. I figured let's make some of our own. Let's have some fun here. Audience participation time. Hit me up. Give me your feedback in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, you know where to do it. All right. I'll get us started here. Who's going to lead the team with catches? Is it going to be Jacoby Lane or is it going to be Makai Lemon? Smart money says Makai is going to have more chances just because of the routes he runs. I don't know. Is it possible that someone else fills that role? Will Prince Strawn come out? Is he going to show up from Boise State and just be the dude? Is Jay Fair part of the conversation? I think everyone agrees. Makai and Jacoby will be wide receivers 1A, 1B. The real question is, who's number 3? What about Eli Sanders out of the backfield in the slot? So question number 1, who is your breakout wide receiver in 2025? We know it's not going to be Jacoby or Mackay. They've already broken out. It's moved to the running backs. Based on the way everyone's been talking about them, coming, leaving spring camp, Waymon Jordan has everyone talking about how good he is. Plus, you have, I mentioned Eli Sanders just a second ago. You've got sophomore Brian Jackson. I have Waymon Jordan with the most carries and yards. I have Brian Jackson with the most touchdowns. So let me make this question specific to Eli Sanders. Will he have more passing or rushing touchdowns? In other words, more receiving or rushing touchdowns? Let me know. I think he's going to have more catching the ball out of the backfield, lining him up in the slot. In fact, I think Waymon Jordan will have the most carries. I think Brian Jackson will have the most rushing touchdowns. What do you think Eli's going to do? Let's go to tight ends. Who's going to lead the tight ends? Lake McCree, when healthy, one tough SOB. He's a tough SOB regardless, but you get my point. He's going to play until he can't do it anymore physically. But is Walker Lyons the guy now? He's healthy. He's had a full spring camp to kind of, showcase and be the guy. So here's the question for the tight end room. Will Walker get 30 or more catches in 2025, or do you want to take the under? And how many will Walter Matthews and Joey Olsen have? Jade Mayaba, will he have 30 touchdown passes and fewer than 10 interceptions in 2025? True or false? I'm not going to give you my prediction yet. I want to hear your feedback. What about Cam Fountain, Anthony Lucas, Braylon Shelby? They're going to combine for 20 sacks in 2025. True or false? Cam Fountain, Anthony Lucas, Braylon Shelby. The three of them combined, 20 sacks. True or false? Here's another question for you. Jakeem Stewart, Thanos. He will be starting by the time USC travels to South Bend, Indiana. Here's another one for you. A little bit of a gamble. Eric Gentry. He's going to play a full regular season and not miss any games. True or false? USC secondary they're going to have more than 12 interceptions in 2025. True or false? By the way, that's how many they had in 2024 total. That's like that's one per game. One per regular season game. Teams that had more than USC, San Jose State, they had 21. DJ Harvey transferred to USC. He had 4 of those. Bishop Fitzgerald, he's bringing 3 from last year with him from North Carolina State. Now, when you're taking this, I guess, prop bet into consideration, keep in mind, part of your calculus needs to take into account who USC plays and their quarterback, and the fact that, look, they run the ball more in the Big Ten Conference. So let me know. USC will have more than 12. I think they will. And then as far as the Jade Mayaba, 30 and 10, I'm going to take the under on touchdowns. Give me your feelings. All right. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. I think I'm going to have some recruiting information for you. And I'll let you know about that on tomorrow's episode. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.